So I mentioned in a previous video that I had done some graduate research on YouTube apologies and YouTuber apologies specifically. This research came about when I realized that as much as I really enjoy the process of research and that I was enjoying researching in my graduate courses, I was not going to be able to focus and really enjoy this big final project if I didn't relate it back to something I was actually interested in. And that was YouTuber apologies. This is kind of a topic that doesn't have a ton of academic research on it, but the research that is out there is really interesting, and the best research is specific. So I knew that if I wanted to contribute something, it also had to be specific, and at the very least, something that's interesting to look at, interesting to find out about. It's something that I feel like I was able to glean a lot of insights from. God, I mean, the most grueling part was watching all of those apology videos, but also videos leading up to it and directly after. Some of these YouTubers would post every day. That was like a full 30 videos, right, of previous and post apology. So that was just my methodology. I'll get specific right now. I'm probably just going to record my screen. I don't think I expanded on this section enough, so let me do that here. I started with a list of 100 YouTubers who have all, at some point between 2015 and 2021, experienced controversy for which they had to apologize. 50 of those did have an apology video posted to their channel, the other 50 did not. And this was when the goal of my research was to study if the presence of an apology video would affect the channel's views, comments, and advertising. The original goal was too broad, so I was left with 50 YouTubers who had posted an apology video. Of those 50, 27 had publicly available data and videos that I could use for this research. This is my original sheet of controversial YouTubers with who they are, what category of content they create, and what their controversy was, which could be multiple controversies. These lists are kind of crazy because some of these YouTuber controversies are actual crimes, and some are moral failings, and some are simply just less toxic or awful, really, than others. I have it in front of me, so I'm gonna just talk about it. The whole thing is called an applied project, and the applied project title is Examining How the Presence of an Apology Video Affects a YouTuber's Comments, Channel Views, and Advertising. This research is from July 22nd, 2022, and it was done over the course of really about 12 months consistently. And my entire degree was about 2 years. It was an accelerated degree, and I would say that the research shows that it was not as long as maybe like a typical master's degree, and I really do think that there are some things that I would have done if I'd have spent more time on it, if I'd been able to spend more time there. Now, there are a lot of very specific things in this paper that are requirements of this kind of project, but also details that are important for the context of the study surrounding how the data was collected, etc. And while I'm just going through this video here and showing you portions, I don't really want to just show you pages and read off the screen. So instead, if anyone would like to see this PDF for themselves or read it through for themselves, I can probably put it on a website, and then you guys can take it from like a Google Drive from there. Anyway, I do still want to keep this a little more interesting though, but if anything, just looking through the pages and like skimming it, I think is still fun to do. I loved getting to design the little pages and just kind of like throwing in some more references, etc. Like, that was the best. I mean, second best part. The first best part was like being able to do this research at all and then finding things out from it, finding out things like how it matters what platform you post an apology on, and how, well, the whole thing is about whether or not the presence of that apology video affects how your channel is viewed, right? And how your channel gets engagement. So I think it was important, and it's really cool, right? To like be able to do something like that and then graduate. In the summary right up front, I'm just talking about how I want to evaluate the relationship between a public apology video on a YouTuber's channel and the career of that YouTuber in the aftermath, right? So some people decide to post an apology video on their channel, and talk about their controversy, or maybe just basically say a few apology phrases, and that is what I'm looking into. But I'm also not looking at people who keep posting through controversy and then do not upload an apology video, right? So just because they experienced controversy, right, or maybe it was referenced, doesn't mean that I took that into account. Well, basically, if something happened and they apologized for it, they're included, but they also had to be within a specific time frame. I'll go over that in a second. I'll go over that, whatever. So because this was a bit of an academic audience and a little more broad than, let's say, fans of YouTubers, I did have to do some explanation, include some details that maybe not everybody here on the actual YouTube platform needs. So again, there are going to be things that I skip over. I included things like the YouTube video monetization guidelines and the community guidelines just to give people a sense of what is and is not allowed on the platform itself and how somebody would receive money from advertisements. And now, in the course of doing the research and the background for this specifically, I found that there were some studies done on YouTuber apologies, like, let's say, how many apology phrases were used per minute, right? And how many likes that video got in relation to videos with less apology phrases. This study from The Pudding found that the like to dislike ratio was more favorable in videos that had fewer cuts. The same digital essay from The Pudding also showed that there was a rate of subscriber growth where many YouTubers that did find themselves in controversy and then apologizing found that they had a positive rate of subscriber growth after their apology. So this was not entirely negative for people that chose to post an apology, right? I included some specific references to YouTubers and what they apologized for and what the aftermath of that apology was, just to provide some more specific examples throughout the paper. I also included a link to Logan Paul's apology video, as it's one of the more famous ones that has been talked about in media as well as studied, and I included a transcript of it as well. It really just gives you a better idea of like how many times apology phrases are stated, for example. And then I had to kind of ground this in academic theory, right? Things that have already been published, concepts that relate back to this. And one of those is image restoration theory. And that really just goes to kind of the concept behind public relations, the concept behind your public image being favorable. This is essentially that somebody is being held accountable for an action, the action was offensive, the communication is goal-directed, right? And then maintaining a favorable reputation is a key goal of communication. Those are all assumptions under the image restoration theory. I also illustrate here the 5 strategies of image restoration, which are denial, evading responsibility, reducing offensiveness, corrective action, and mortification, which is like actually saying that you're sorry. I define here like what I'm calling a controversy and then also how I define an apology video. So this gets into what counts, right, for the purposes of this study and how I chose the YouTubers that I looked into. So an apology video is defined here by me is a video that includes an apology phrase and then when the intent of that video is to garner a favorable reputation. So other studies about public apologies, YouTube apologies, have attempted to rank the perceived authenticity of the person apologizing, and they also note whether or not the audience or injured party has accepted that apology, and I'm not including that here. I also talk a little bit about the concept of social mediated crisis communication, and this is really just kind of the breakdown of communications online and how different audiences receive that. It begins with influentials who create information to share to others that then pass those down to their followers, and then from their followers to inactive members who aren't following those people, the influentials, but still receive that information kind of like third hand. And finally, the interpersonal theory and the parasocial relationship. So this is just me kind of giving some more background as to why someone might feel betrayed by a controversy or why an audience might feel the need to call for a public apology. I conducted primary research where I looked at the publicly available data from these videos, such as the engagement metrics and whether or not there were advertisers sponsoring that video. And the purpose of this research was to find if there was a statistically significant difference between the engagement on a YouTuber's channel from the time period before their apology video to the time period after. Quick definition for statistical significance. I got this definition from Investopedia, And it says the claim that a set of observed data are not the result of chance, but can instead be attributed to a specific cause. So what I'm saying here is that I want to know if the average number of comments, number of channel views from before a certain date, the date of an apology, to after that date is different, and that it can be attributed to the apology video being posted. And that would tell me whether or not the video had an effect at all. Then obviously I could glean whether or not that was a positive or negative effect, but what I'm doing here is running some tests, seeing if it was statistically significant in the first place. So the actual study sample, the criteria of YouTubers that they had to meet to be included was that they had at least 900,000 subscribers, and then they were publicly involved in a controversy on social media, and that they posted their apology video to YouTube from January 2015 to November 2021. That was my cutoff. Now, apologies that were posted to other platforms beyond YouTube were not taken into account, and then as such, a total of 27 YouTubers were a part of this sample. So my first research question was regarding the effect of an apology video on advertising, and it was, how do public apologies by popular YouTubers affect the advertising associated with their YouTube accounts? My hypothesis was that the average number of advertisements on a YouTuber's videos will differ significantly from the month before the video to the month after the apology video. So these kinds of ads include banner ads, video ads before and during, and then any sponsorships mentioned within the content of the video. But affiliate links were not included. Now for something that I forgot to mention here. This was a flawed way of counting ads, in my opinion. After I completed this research, I realized that I don't think that my method of finding mid-roll ads and just the number of ads that YouTube places on a video, I don't think it was a reliable method. I think it was pretty flawed for a few reasons. And the first reason was that the number of ads on any video can be changed if we're talking YouTube ads, right? And the second reason is that demonetization occurred on several of the videos I was looking at. So what probably happened was I wasn't receiving the same amount of ads at the time of my research versus someone who watched within a week of that upload. And the third reason is that because of the flawed counting, I could only reliably count sponsorships within the videos as ads. So more specifically, these graphs are showing the only 8 YouTubers with sponsorships the month before and after their apology video. The others likely did have ads at one time that I can't reliably count at this time, but that could be historical data in the YouTube API somewhere. I would say more than likely the creators would probably have access to that information because they would be getting paid off of that, but there really isn't a way for me to gain access to that data. So that is a pretty big limitation of this study and this research that I wanted to mention here. Because I'm comparing the averages of the number of ads on the YouTubers' channels before and after, I am using a t-test to compare those averages. I'm running this kind of test, a t-test, because I'm testing a hypothesis, but a paired t-test specifically because I'm comparing 2 sets of data, which is the channel views, number of comments, and number of ad sponsors before an apology video and after an apology video. So I took those numbers and compared the averages of the two. What we're assuming here that would disprove my hypothesis would be that the numbers of channel views, comments, ad sponsors would be the same from the time before to the time after, that they would be normally distributed, that anything that occurs to those views, any jump spikes, would be naturally occurring just by chance. But what I'm testing here is if there was a difference from before to after, and if that difference was big enough, let's say, to attribute to an outside factor like the apology video. And the result of the t-test was that the difference in means was statistically significant, meaning that yes, there is a statistically significant difference between the number of ads before a YouTuber's apology video was posted versus after. However, something I make note of here is that of the 27 YouTubers in the sample, only 8 of them actually had ads in their videos in the 60 days examined in this study. So it's a really small sample size. I make a lot of notes here for future research, and that's definitely one of them where maybe research dedicated entirely to just YouTubers who did have ads during a longer time frame could provide some more insight into this. YouTube also did change the way that they actually give advertisements, and in many cases increase the number of advertisements to people, so some of this, specifically advertising research, is a little outdated by now. That's just how fast things change on the internet. So of the 8 YouTubers that had ads at all in this 60-day time period, only 4 of them had ads on their channel videos in the time after their apology video. So I did include some graphs that represent those changes. You can see that really there just weren't many ads overall. And again, further research is going to be needed with a larger pool of YouTubers that had ads during that time. The topic of my second research question was the effect of apology videos on engagement. So the research question was, what are the mitigating effects, if any, of an apology video after a controversy on the engagement of a YouTube account? And my hypothesis was the average number of comments and channel views will differ significantly from the month before to the month following an apology video. So here I'm just measuring the number of channel views as well as the number of comments per video. I'm taking these metrics mostly from YouTube itself as well as Social Blade and the Wayback Machine. Here I did use another t-test to compare averages, and 21 YouTubers were included this time. So YouTubers that had no channel views data available were excluded here. To collect the channel views data, Social Blade actually only has 1 data point per month, and that really did limit what I was able to show in a graph. So again, these graphs, very few data points. So for channel views specifically, what I found was that there was actually no statistically significant difference between the channel views before an apology video and the channel views after an apology video, on average. So also, 4 YouTubers had a negative trend line in their channel views data, and the YouTubers Jenna Marbles and PewDiePie actually saw positive trend lines after their apology videos. This is another one where, again, more data would definitely help us glean more accurate insights into this. And now for the average comments t-test, here we included 25 YouTubers, and then those YouTubers that turned off video comments or had no comment data available were excluded. So here we found, again, that the comments, the average number of comments from before an apology video was posted to after, was not statistically significant. So while we can see differences on the graphs, a YouTuber's engagement is not always a negative trend following an apology video. It doesn't always go down. And I included all the graphs of the YouTubers included here, and you can see some of their names. And I was also able to make some observations. So for example, Alfie Diaz, Jeffree Star, React, and Banana Peppers, which is Graveyard Girl, their trend of comments after the apology video was positive. And 21 YouTubers included in this study had negative trends in their comments after the apology video. So in the case of T. Martin, after his CSGO gambling controversy, there were a lot of comments posting ASCII art of the word scammer over and over again. So that's a case where the initial engagement might go up, but they're negative comments specifically. And this is my favorite section because it's kind of the section where you can just be like, this is everything I wish I could have done. This is everything that I wish I could have changed. And here's what we still need to find out. So the limitation section. A lot of the limitations here, I might have already gone through a few, but I will just have to point them out again and again and again because you find them in a lot of other studies, sure, but especially about the internet, right? Like these things, we want to believe that the internet is forever, but it really takes the work of a lot of archivists to make that happen. So here are some of the limitations. The small sample and short time period studied. So 27 YouTubers, initially I wanted to include 100. So that's how I ended up at 27 YouTubers. Again, very small sample. If I had had more time, maybe I would have been able to find more. And I think that helps with data collection in general when you have a larger sample size. Next is limited data points for channel views. Again, the way that Social Blade reports data and the way that I was collecting it really only allowed for 1 data point in the 30 days previous to an apology video and 30 days after. So engagement data limitation is one where the 2 engagement measures I used in this study were only 2 of many that I could have chosen, let's say, so there are still more engagement measures that one could look into in this topic alone. Next is data collection and analysis limitations. So YouTubers with multiple apology videos were only counted once, and examined by the earliest apology on their YouTube account. Future research should consider that the effect of the presence of multiple apology videos on their engagement and advertising versus having only one. Next is deleted videos. When a YouTuber deletes a video from their account, the historical video views and monthly video views reflect a negative number equal to the views deleted on their Social Blade account. And at least 3 YouTubers in this study had a Social Blade report that showed negative values as a result of deleted videos, and those were Liza Koshy and David Dobrik, as well as Shane Dawson. The YouTube data collection limitation is another one that is more limited by the platform, so the data collected is subject to change at any moment, and also the access is subject to change because the platform may stop allowing third-party access like through Social Blade, or previously we used to be able to get more metrics just publicly off the platform, right? And now we can't even see things like dislikes unless, again, we go through a third-party platform. And now the YouTuber posting schedules limitation. This one's a little less important, I would say, but again, it still counts because we're talking about like things that affected the data here, and one of those is the fact that all of these YouTubers posted at different times. Some of them had a daily posting schedule, like I mentioned, and some of them had monthly. So if you're only posting once a month, again, it makes for limited data points. Then there was also the case of YouTubers that immediately after following their apology video chose to take about a month off from posting entirely. So that also skewed the data. And now here's some opportunities for future research which really interest me. So the titles of apology videos. A lot of these apology videos weren't simply titled, "I'm sorry." Like, I didn't include this one in this. For example, the one that's coming to me off the top of my head, I couldn't include it here because it hadn't happened yet, but most recently, Colleen Ballinger's, it wasn't an apology video, but the toxic gossip train, that one was just called Hi, right? But there were other videos that were specifically included in this study that were things like, "We need to talk," right? That was another one, and there's no apology phrase written in there. So studies on how effective including an apology within the title is for garnering sympathy, let's say, versus not including that at all. I wonder how that might affect your engagement. And then chosen apology platform, like I mentioned, not every YouTuber that is involved in some kind of public controversy will even post a public YouTube video about it. There are YouTubers that have actually been involved in controversy that chose instead to post on other platforms like Twitter, TikTok, or even Patreon. I also included a few examples here of people who maybe they were YouTubers, but they didn't necessarily get into that controversy on the YouTube platform. Maybe it happened on Twitter, so that's where they apologized. And further research could also look specifically into TikTok apology videos, which are now becoming a genre all their own. Next is the presence of affiliate links. I did not specifically count affiliate links as ads when I was going through and marking how many advertisements a video had. And this is actually an idea that I had initially that ended up being too big, right? It would have been kind of 2 separate studies with multiple research questions within, and I wanted to be a little more focused and specific. So I narrowed it down after that. But I think something that could be interesting in the future is determining the effects of the presence versus the absence of an apology video, right? So the controversy happens, and whether or not the person apologized, maybe they definitely did apologize, but they didn't do it through a public video. So I wonder how that affects their engagement or number of advertisers as well. And this is a really big one. The internet is not forever. So there's so many data points, so many videos, screenshots, things that have been deleted along the way that kind of prove to us that the internet is not forever. Things do degrade over time. And if we want to keep something alive, if we want to store data, if we want to keep that lost media alive, for example, the archivists that are constantly saving it and putting it on hard drives and moving it from one place to another, they're the ones keeping that alive. And they don't exist for every niche, right? And they don't have all the storage space in the world. So there are parts of the internet that will be lost. And that's just because we don't have the ability, the space to store everything that exists. Some of that's good, some of it's bad, right? Like, there are bad actors that might get away with things simply because we can no longer store the evidence of their wrongdoing. So that's probably something that should be avoided. But then there are others who maybe evidence of their wrongdoings or just evidence of them being a kid online, for example. Maybe evidence of that goes away. So, double-edged sword, probably. There's good, there's bad. And then finally, I made some key recommendations. So, this is an applied project, but specifically it's a white paper. And the purpose of white papers is kind of like to teach you something, but I mean, a lot of white papers in advertising specifically are to sell you something. And usually it's like to sell you a product, and it's like a big tech product that they're explaining as kind of the solution to a problem that they outline in the paper, right? So here I'm more just kind of, this is an educational white paper, but I end it with key recommendations for anyone looking to hire influencers. And I'm basically just talking about how influencers are still people, they're human beings, and controversy, what is defined as controversy, changes every day. So no one can necessarily predict whether or not somebody they've hired is going to have to apologize for something, right, or gets themselves into trouble, etc. You can't really predict it, but what you can do is include clauses in your contracts with them stating that these are the things that you won't accept, that you will break the contract over, right? That stuff already exists, but you need to plan for if that person that you hired is making an apology for something that was not outlined in the contract, right? So it's not something so egregious, like criminal, that is immediately like the termination of their contract. They have to define some parameters, right? From, okay, they can just apologize and move on, to absolutely like termination of their contract. And then move forward like, okay, this is the kind of thing that we would accept from a spokesperson. This is the kind of apology that we would want to see from them. They have to define those things. It's better to be safe than sorry, like, not having a plan is having a plan to fail, blah, blah, blah. So the 4 things that I mentioned here are plan for an apology, vet all the influencers, so the same team that's supposed to find these influencers in the first place that might help your brand, you also have to look into them a little bit. Don't cheap out on the research, just go a little farther than the first page, all right? And next is establish guidelines, and then finally, stay consistent. And some of the conclusions here, the main thing that I want to talk about is that YouTubers who find themselves with this decision whether or not to post an apology video should really just put authenticity at the forefront of their decision making, because whether or not people forgive you, whether or not it's something that's forgivable, the point is that you are attempting to communicate in a way that's honest, and if it's specifically communicating an apology, you have to be genuine, you have to be willing to go through some mortification, right? Go through some apology phrases, and connect in your audience in a different way than you would, let's say, in a normal video, right? A very edited video. So something I write here is that given the frequency with which YouTubers have deleted poorly received videos, YouTube archivists have taken it upon themselves to re-upload that content. So it's in your best interest to do it right the first time, right? Apologize candidly. Apologize candidly. And then I also have my references here, which, I mean, if anything, going through the references would be great for anyone that's interested in learning more, because there's actually a lot of research out there. There's a lot of people that were dedicated to apology research in general, as well as YouTuber research. It would be really easy to say that, like, I did this for the laughs, right? But honestly, I did this to kind of help me finish grad school, and also because once I started, I realized how passionate I was about it, and I had the support of my professors who were extremely kind throughout and also incredibly knowledgeable. I feel like doing this, I definitely learned more, and it made me want to keep learning more, which, if you get that out of school, and especially out of a graduate degree, like, even better, right? It's amazing to be made into a lifelong learner. But also sometimes I feel like we're not really bold enough to try things that we think other people might laugh at or just not take seriously, right? But you're the only person that needs to take yourself seriously. One YouTuber apology that comes up a lot as an example of a really great apology is that of Jenna Marbles. And Jenna Marbles' apology was appreciated, applauded at its time, because not only did she show specifically what she was apologizing for, but the way that she was taking accountability was by leaving the internet, which, while some have attempted to do, other YouTubers have left for maybe a month, a few months, sometimes just a few weeks. Jenna Marbles took her accountability to another level by saying, because I don't want to be in the position to hurt people like that, I'm going to remove myself. That kind of authenticity, that kind of self-awareness, it really was unheard of, because even when people can understand that there is a way to make a living, make a life outside of YouTube, many would prefer not to. So after such controversies, we really haven't seen people hold themselves that accountable, right? But we have seen people be deplatformed, right? Or jailed, right? For certain crimes, controversies. And the choice wasn't up to them. So when the choice was up to Jenna Marbles entirely, nobody was pushing her off the internet, and her own fans defended her and even said that she had nothing to apologize for, which was, in my opinion, incorrect. She chose to leave and to stick to her guns, and she's still gone. And that it's something that's extremely brave to do. This is no longer the way she makes a living. So clearly, I'm not saying it's an easy decision, but when people keep bringing this up as an example, I think the point that they're making is that this is somebody who we can believe, and we can believe understands the consequences of her actions because she's still living them. And there's self-imposed consequences. It's brave, it's bold, it's not something we've seen from many others. So now, stepping back from the context of the advertising industry or me making recommendations to an advertising agency, someone looking to hire YouTubers, influencers, if I were to just put my own personal thoughts out there, what I want is genuinely for people to be honest about things, transgressions when they occur, but also to understand that the decisions they make, for example, whether or not to post a video on the same platform where a controversy happened, or whether or not to expand and apologize on several platforms so that most people will see it, whether or not to promote things like that. These are all decisions that, regardless of your intentions, have an impact, right? So understanding the consequences of not apologizing or apologizing only to a few people on a smaller platform, those are all things that can still harm others. So if your intention is not to cause harm, the Jenna Marbles route is kind of the way to go, right? Because the only way to ensure that you will never cause harm is by not putting anything out there. So instead, what you have to be willing to do is address things when they come up, because we all have the capacity to hurt people in some way. So it's what we do after that that matters.